Good morning, church, and welcome to the first of 3 services. This will be broadcast as our 8:30 a.m. service, and we're excited today because we're bringing you 3 different services with 3 different times of different content. It's a lot of use of the word different, but you know what I mean. But hey, before we get started discussing the scriptures, we're going to sing the scriptures. So let's take a moment, let's lock in on the presence of the Lord, and let's minister to him in song, and then we'll be right back to discuss the scriptures with our guest today, Samuel Whitefield. God bless you guys. Let's worship together.
One word from you, things change on your authority. Your word is true. Things change on your authority. One word from you. Things change. Oh, on your authority. Your word is true. Things change. Oh,
All right, everybody, welcome back, and we're real excited. So we had a guest minister in. This is actually, for those who call it Word of Life their home, we had a guest minister in December. The snow came. We got snowed out for the first time. We're having you in, Samuel, this weekend, and of course we've got Snowmageddon, and so we've all been getting home, for this. But I want to introduce Samuel Whitefield, who is a teacher, a prophetic teacher of the Scriptures, and he's an author. Many of you, if you've been here at Word of Life, you're familiar with books like Discipleship Begins with Beholding, and just went through your book, The Modern State of Jacob, with a small group. And so many people were just so impacted by the way the Lord was revealed in that and what it did in their hearts. So that was an amazing time. But he's also taught all throughout the world, all throughout the Middle East, the Global South, and Southeast Asia, in addition to being here in the States. And so there's a great breadth of experience across nations. And of course, we're honored to have you here today. And so we're putting you to work, man, because let's go. So not just one message that you had for the church, but I've actually, we're going to fire some other questions and other things. So, but let's dive in for today, church. Let's dive into the Scriptures. So we've been, as a church, teaching through the book of Ephesians chapter. We did the whole pre-work on Ephesians. That was 5 different messages. We've been in chapter 1. Yeah, of course, nice. Chapter 2. And now we've been in chapter 3, but as I shared that with you, there was one particular thing that jumped out to you that sometimes doesn't get a lot of play in Christianity about the Lord, and particularly about how he works in and through us. So with that, I want to pivot to you. Welcome. We're glad to have you here, and let's get at it. Let's get discussing the Word.
Okay, thank you. It's always a privilege to be here. I just feel so connected to this church family, even though I'm not here in the flesh.
Yeah.
Just have a deep connection. So I'm very grateful for
Absolutely.
you and for the whole church family. Why don't we just jump in?
Yeah.
Maybe Ephesians 3, there's a few things I was thinking about just listening to your message even last week, kind of where you landed, exhorting us to the family.
Yes.
Right? And even Paul's prayer at the end of the chapter, in light of that whole narrative, is about the family.
Yeah. Really coming into, and just for context for everybody, over the last 2 weeks we talked about how for the Jewish believers, those early disciples, how the whole world had turned upside down, because now the Gentiles who've been on the out, maybe they could kind of flirt with Israel, be on the out, mildly accepted, but now they've been made joint heirs with these guys through Christ, with Jesus Christ being the chief cornerstone, and how that whole dynamic changes. And then we looked at what does that say about us and how we love people. Everybody's an image bearer, right? And then even today, how it's reversed, and now the Lord's actually speaking to the nations about don't discount your Jewish brethren, and don't allow anything to cause a division there. And then secondarily, we looked at how Paul said, I'm a prisoner. Like out of my deep love for Jesus, I've allowed these parameters around my life, and then we again locked in over the following week. We did the prayer, that we want to grow in the knowledge of him. And anyway, we've been having fun, how the church is a statement, our lives, Christ in them is a statement. To the powers and principalities, that we can demonstrate the things that even the forces of darkness cannot. Reconciliation, healing, all of that. All that to pivot to say that was our context as we land in here with you in chapter 3. But there's something in chapter 3 again you said that really, really jumps out.
Yep. All right. So let's grab that part about the saints, and then I want to look at what Paul says about himself. Because I just think anytime in this conversation we have to say it again. Paul says, I want to talk about the revelation of the mystery of Jesus.
Yeah.
And I think if we take surveys of people, what's the mystery of Jesus? Oh, he's God, he's man, that's not what Paul says. Those are all true statements, right? Paul goes, this revelation of the mystery is that people that don't like each other and aren't like each other have been forged into family. Yeah. And I've been reflecting on Jesus and his choice of the disciples. That is like no one's leadership strategy. Let's pick the guy who's a zealot, who wants to kill the guy who's a tax collector. Yes. Let's pick the arrogant guy that wants to run over everyone that we call Peter with 2 other really ambitious guys. Let's put a few quiet people because we don't hear much about several of the disciples. Yeah. Let's smash them all on the same team.
Love it.
And Jesus is like, this is what I enjoy doing. I enjoy creating this kind of environment. And to your point, Paul's basically going, this is how you instruct the powers. This is spiritual warfare. Mm-hmm. But I was listening to last week, what I was struck with is, what really struck me was Paul saying this is the revelation of Jesus. And I'm going, okay, so if I don't embrace this in the context of the church, when people offend me, when they're different than me, if I don't embrace it, I'm actually keeping my city from discovering who Jesus is.
Wow.
Because he said, this is the revelation of the mystery, which implies if you don't do this, if you don't have this, then you have covered and hidden the mystery. So our cities, to an extent, can be in darkness about the gospel if we don't do this. And if Jew and Gentile have to do this, then the obvious implication, because most of us are probably, different flavors of Gentile, that means the Gentiles and the Gentiles should do this.
Yeah.
And so if we're not doing this hard work, we're hiding Jesus from our communities.
Wow. That's a profound dynamic. If we allow offense and unforgiveness, friction, personality dislikes to keep us we don't embrace what Christ did through the cross as Christians. We can sing about it, all that, but if we don't really put in the hard work to do it, we're hiding to some extent. We're keeping Christ hidden from a community.
It's hidden from the community, which is obviously so important. And this was Paul's burden, is that you do this so that your community can actually see a flesh and blood picture of who God is. That's your calling, is to essentially represent God in flesh and blood. Not only are you hiding it from your community, Paul says you're actually hiding it from the spiritual powers, because the verse you quote, Ephesians 3 verse 10, you're supposed to instruct the powers by how you live as a people.
Wow.
He's going, teach the heavenly realm who I am. Like this is spiritual warfare. Like we sometimes think it's this or that or certain expressions, but Paul's going, no. There could be other expressions, but Paul's going, no. Focus in on this. Actually reveal the mystery and how you live with your brother who's offended you, your brother who's got a different ethnic background, social background. He's got more money. He's got less money. You guys offend each other. But wait a minute, there's a family. What's going on here? Jesus is now being revealed, which means if it's not happening, he's getting hidden, which is a tragedy for our neighborhoods, communities.
That really speaks to how much we are a flesh and blood demonstration of Christ.
Exactly.
Literally, he inhabits his people.
Right.
That there's an incarnational reality lived out that is profound and supernatural. It makes me think of John 17, Jesus' prayer. Lord, I pray, make them all one, as you and I are one, you, them and me and you, that the world may know that you sent me. That's the testimony that comes out of this.
No, John 17, verse 21 and 23, you're absolutely right. Jesus basically says, the evidence I exist is a people.
Say that again.
The evidence, the primary evidence that I exist is a people.
Wow.
If we dug into those verses, he says, so that the world might know that I came. I would expect preserve the Bible, which is a really important thing, right? Yeah. Or teach good apologetics, a very good thing. And he goes, give me a people, so that the world will know. He says it twice, verse 21 and 23. Jesus says something twice, it's really important.
Yeah.
And the language he uses in verse 23 is, give me a people that will force the world to acknowledge, whether they believe or not. Because in one verse he says that they may believe. In other words, there's a redemptive thing. As we put Jesus on display in flesh and blood, people go, man, I kind of like the way you live, and I like that, Jesus. But then Jesus goes a step further and goes, so that the world will be forced to acknowledge. They'll know I exist, right? They may not believe me. Not everyone will follow me, but they'll go, that Jesus guy is real because of this community, which we call.
There's no other way this community gathers but apart from.
There's no other way.
And I love the way that's said, because the biblical reality, the truth here, confronts even some of our stereotypes. Exactly. I think about how the Bible uses terms, and then how we sometimes allow culture to redefine terms. So if I were to say church to you, I know you'd be like, man, I know that's what Jesus suffered and died for, bled for, has called together, is working in. I know that's the way you're going to think. Other people like, no, church to me is it's a man-made construct. It's this. It's a building you go to. And the reason we're having this conversation is I'm very adamant. We tear down all those definitions and we keep speaking what is true. Right. And this is the testimony. Then that's my prayer for Word of Life. We are not just a building you gather in.
Right.
We are a people gathered around the divine man, demonstrating these things.
And one of the reasons I just wanted to bring this point up is because I know that one of the emphasis in this season is build your church.
Yes.
So the thing is, if you don't know what you're trying to build, you'll end up with like the Tower of Pisa. Like we built a little foundation here, we built a building. Some people may not know what that is, but it's basically a very famous tower in Italy, and they didn't build the foundation right, and so the thing tilted.
Yes.
And so for hundreds of years, it's tilting because you didn't do your foundation right.
Yeah.
And so my point is like, we would all say, yeah, let's build the church, and it's like, but if we don't grasp what the target Paul's giving us, we're not going to build what we're actually meant to build. To your point, it will have different definitions of church, and it'd be an assembly, a club, or whatever, but it won't be this.
We'll use the Bible. We won't use the Bible. It's like, no. We build according to what Christ has laid out through the Scriptures.
Right. And so, for example, when you dig into this, you go, oh, wow, it's different people that love each other. Jesus said that's the primary demonstration. And then it kind of opens things up, and you go, okay, so wait a minute. I thought the church meant a bunch of people that think and act exactly the same and are perfect and never have a problem. And then you kind of look at Jesus' disciples, you look at the New Testament, and you go, oh, that's not it. These are people that are very different.
Very big problems.
Right? And so we're thinking, well, I can't bear witness until I'm perfect. But you're like, no, actually, we bear witness in our failure, because what happens is I do something very offensive to you, maybe even intentionally. And the world would go, I'm out. Unfriending, unfollowing,
Cancel
we're
culture.
done, cancel. Instead, I go, you know what, Chris, I shouldn't have done that. And you open up your heart and receive me, and actually the gospel's made known, not because these people that perfectly get along are the same, it's because in the midst of our failure and our sin and our shortcomings, we reveal the mystery by maintaining relationship, forgiving each other. And so it just liberates us to go, I can instruct the powers, not by being perfect, though we aim for holiness and righteousness, but actually because when we sin against each other, we don't do what the world does. And we contend with each other, and we bear along with each other, and all of those things.
And I just think about in that hypothetical you just gave, you apologized to me for sinning against me. But even in reality, I don't need to wait for your apology to forgive you. And that's what when we love and follow the man of Galilee who carried the beams, that's the way he forms our hearts.
Right.
We don't just have information. Any info we get from the Scriptures is meant for formation, that it really does shape us. So I love that. I love what you pulled out. Hopefully you guys love that too. That's really rich. And that's not, and again, I always like to say that's not superhero living. That's just fundamental Christianity. And I'm not waiting for you to demonstrate it.
Right.
Once I read it, once I behold him in the text, I then become accountable for living it. And you may do it. You may walk with me for a season, do it. You may fall off. But as for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. All right, what else in this chapter pops out to you that you just felt that you wanted to share?
All right, so let's talk a little bit about Apostle Paul, because he makes some critical statements. You already mentioned a few of them, but the phrase that just, at least for me, really jumps out of this chapter is when Paul says, hey, by the way, I'm writing to you as the least of all the saints.
Least of all the saints.
What a statement. You might say, well, he's the least of the apostles because when Jesus was here, he wasn't really, following Jesus. He didn't say that. It's very interesting that he says, I'm the least of all the saints, right? And I think sometimes we construct ideas. Oh man, Paul must have been, we take cultural ideas and apply to him. He must have been impressive. He must have been powerful. He must have been a good speaker. And I'm thinking even in other passages where Paul goes, yeah, when I show up, you guys go, he's not such a good preacher. He writes big letters, but he's not such a good preacher. And so, you quoted earlier, but Paul builds this case where he goes, guys, I'm operating as an apostle because I was called by God to do that. It's a gift of God. It's a grace on my life, and I operate in it. But you've got to realize something. There aren't superior humans. There's only one kind of human. And God gives out gifts, and some of those gifts might lead to a bigger scope of authority or a quote-unquote leadership role or something. But Paul's going, I'm not different than you. God's given me a grace and a gift. I'm operating it in. And I think it's so important because we read the Bible and we're like, Paul, he's just this unbelievable figure and his life is beautiful. But the Bible wasn't written so you can go, Paul, he's amazing. Let's build a museum to him. Let's do this. The Bible's written so you can be provoked and go, I could be like Paul.
Yeah.
And again, you might not be given the assignment to go open up the Mediterranean world. It's not about the assignment, but it's about, oh, wait, man, this is a guy that ignored Jesus when he was on the earth. Yep. This guy fought against Jesus. Yep. This guy was really smart and was not convinced by anyone. Yeah. And then Jesus kindly showed himself. And this guy became a man who would suffer on behalf of people that were truly his enemies culturally.
Yeah.
He would go reach out to Gentiles. And Paul's going, but guys, I'm the least. And I think we read that and we go, well, Paul's exaggerating to make people feel better because sometimes we, speak that way to each other. And I think Paul would want us to grasp, no, I'm just one of the saints. I'm the least. Now I'm operating in my gift and my grace. That's real. And then he says the thing you quoted earlier. He says, guys, I'm a prisoner of Jesus. And what Paul's describing is a concept I think Paul really gets into in his letter to the Corinthians, where he basically discusses the idea of weakness. What I would call biblical weakness is that we live in a culture where competition, right? Do the best, be the smartest, be the strongest. And Paul says clearly, I work harder than anyone.
Yeah.
So it's not about Paul's passive, he doesn't use his gifts. But Paul basically says, like, my gift is not a reward on the basis of my strength. It's the grace, right? It's the grace of God in my life. And Paul basically said, he writes to the Corinthians, the only thing Paul boasts of is his weakness. And he actually makes this case that weakness is a marker of a true and a false apostle.
Wow.
Because he lays out the false apostles and he says they're comparing themselves against each other. They've made you their servants. In other words, what are they doing? They're exerting strength. And Paul says, I've only got one boast, weakness. And he says, because Jesus told me something. In your weakness, my power is perfected.
Wow.
That there is this mystery that you and I have bodies of clay, right? But there's this mystery that divine power operates most best in fragile, weak forms. It's a paradox. It's not about denying the power of God, but it's about the way it operates. Is that when strength is inherently self-centered. I mean, the kind of strengths Paul's talking about, right? Sure. There is a biblical strength. But Paul's going, these guys comparing against each other. Who's got more followers? Who's got more likes? We got a bigger budget. We got a bigger ministry. And Paul's basically saying, it's shameful that attracts you because that's the way of the world. Who's bigger? Who's stronger? Yeah. And he's going, we're in a kingdom where Jesus won the victory by embracing ultimate weakness, which is he looked at his Father and said, whatever you want to do to me, you can. And he looked at his enemies, right? And ultimately to his Roman executioners, and you can do whatever you want. In other words, Jesus embraced absolute weakness. I'm a prisoner, right? I'm now being executed. I'm not even going to save my life from you. It's like God looked at the powers and said, do whatever you want to do. And what happened when Jesus died in weakness, right? He exploded in a resurrected body. The power of God explodes and changes the cosmos. And Paul sees this pattern very deeply, that he goes, when you exert your strength and your ideas, he goes, you're actually out of the gospel. But there's this way in which we recognize, God, I don't have the power to do my calling. You've given me a burden for that school or those kids or that. I don't feel I have the power. And the Lord's like, that's right. It's exactly right. Right? But there's this place. And just to clarify for people, when we talk about weakness, there's biblical weakness, right? We're not making excuses for our sin, for walking in compromise. No, so there's a lot we can't break down in the time, but just to say that clearly for people, there's a biblical weakness. In our time, sometimes weakness is a cover for, I don't want to do the hard work, I don't want to do discipleship, I'm okay with sin. That's not what, Paul's not talking about that. But Paul is basically saying, guys, everything I'm doing is not from the strength of my intellect. Though I'm working hard, I've discovered that I am weak and incapable of changing anyone. But I've embraced this place where I'm now letting the grace of God flow through me. And he's using that language. Guys, I'm a slave of Jesus. I mean, what's weaker than a slave? Mm-hmm. Right? And he goes, oh, and by the way, I'm a slave of Jesus for one purpose, because Jesus wanted you. Wow. So for the sake of the Gentiles, now I'm not, to your point, I'm not your doormat. There's a lot we could say about what does it mean to be a slave, but what Paul's basically saying is I'm a slave of Jesus, right? And what he's saying is, as a slave, you know, kind of what happens to you? Well, I'm now connected to the family. I'm serving the family. It's the goal of the family. That's what Paul's after. He's going, you're not an independent, strong, powerful guy to draw people to you. You're now attached really to Jesus, but when you're attached to him, you get attached to his family. And now you're a slave in a sense of, I can't go have my calling apart from the church. I can't go have my destiny apart from the church. You were mentioning the family last week, right? Yeah. That went before us. None of us are here apart from them, even though we don't see them in the flesh, you know? And so it's that idea of, man, this is a weakness. It's not my own thing. My own strength is not securing this. My ministry calling is not the root of my own strength. And anyway, there's just so much that Paul says there that I think it's easy to kind of go past it quickly, because in our mind we have a picture of what this kind of apostle would be.
And it's not that, you know, and just here, because there's a couple of things that jump out to me while you're talking. You know, I'm thinking about, you said the comparison, like he's talking about these apostles compare. So it's not that something big is bad.
No,
it's that when something big defines your worth or is your accreditation. No, my accreditation is actually the testimony, the power of the Holy Spirit, and that happens because I know that I'm weak. Right. Like, there's a lot that Paul could have boasted about. I mean, this guy was the Hebrew of Hebrews. He said, but I forget all that. I'm putting it all behind. Right. You know, I want to know him in the power of his resurrection. And then we talk about being a slave. Like, he willingly, out of deep love and affection for Jesus, said, you get to draw the parameters. Right. The is what you're sharing. Like, I love the way you say that. Like, I can't fulfill what God's given me without being attached to the thing that God loves, which is his body.
No, that's exactly right. And you kind of said something that we need to say, which is a lot of times in Christian circles, give Jesus your heart, give Jesus whatever. But Paul really introduces this idea of give Jesus your body.
Wow.
Right? And I think we kind of don't think about that sometimes. Meaning we might think about it in terms of avoid sin. Mm-hmm. In that case, walk in holiness, which is right.
Yeah.
But Paul's introduced this idea, I'm a prisoner of Jesus, which means my body goes wherever he wants it to go. And again, that can be across the street. In his case, it was a few shipwrecks. Like
mm-hmm. It could be in other nations.
Yeah, everyone doesn't have to walk it out the same way. But to circle back to our point in the very beginning is that the church is the physical body of Jesus. And Paul tapped into that and he went, oh, my body belongs to you. Mm. I'm a slave. I'm connected to you as a slave, meaning in a healthy way, meaning just I'm joined to the family. It's the success of the family. I don't have my own agendas. I don't have my own.
I've submitted my life, under your leadership.
Which sometimes means, just so no one gets confused, being a slave of the body doesn't necessarily mean we do everything everyone wants us to do.
Correct.
It means we're a slave to Jesus's body and what Jesus wants for that body. So sometimes it means doing things for people they don't want us to do.
Yeah. Loving, speaking truth. It could be amongst a lot of different things.
So don't think a slave in maybe the worldly sense of like, well, as a human, I just have to do whatever this other person wants. That's not, Paul's not speaking of that, but he does want to shock us with the idea of you're not your own.
You're bought with a
your
price.
Destiny's tied to a family.
Yeah.
Your job is to contend for the good of that family unit, because in Paul's context, a slave was usually attached to a family unit, so to speak.
And I love that too, because especially for us here in the West, as we like to say, or in the States, is that we think so individually, and we forget how communal the Bible is. How when it says to you, it's speaking to a body. It's speaking to an assembly of people called out of darkness into a family, even though we were all diverse, backgrounds and all that type of stuff, generations, is that it calls us for the sake of that family. It calls us for Christ being in that family. It's not just, in our home, reading our devotional, which is good, but it's in the larger context. You're a part of something much bigger, and you're connected to something much bigger, and you don't get the luxury of thinking you can just operate independently of it.
Right.
And I think I'm believing that is a big awakening happening in the American church now and in the days ahead, especially the church that's going to thrive and do well and host the presence of God.
And so this, there's a lot obviously to talk about here, but this kind of gets us into kind of the second goal in the church, like, here am I, send me, right? Yeah. And so Paul's actually giving us a lot of insight into what it means to be, and what it sent and what it is required to be sent, right? And so, first of all, whatever you're sent from, you reproduce. So if you want to be sent, And again, sent on whatever scope the Lord gives you. To your point, nothing wrong with big. The Bible never says big is bad. It just says big isn't the goal. And it's not necessarily good to be bigger, but it's not bad, to your point. Just do whatever your sphere is. But here am I send me. Number one, I'm going to reproduce what I'm sent from. So if you want to be sent, the first thing is, okay, how do we build a healthy family? Otherwise, what are you being sent for? What are you going to reproduce? Right? And
That's very, very good.
Yeah, and we don't necessarily get to pick what we're sent for. Again, the Lord may plant a seed in your heart that grows. It may feel very natural, but the Lord assigns people different places, different nations, different assignments. Sometimes surprises them. Like, none of us can pick to be Apostle Paul. Like, I want to be sent to the Gentiles. So our responsibility related to sending, or at least our first responsibility, is, hey, build the family, the incubator from which the Lord can send people. Right? We can't decide who everyone's assignment is, but we can create the incubator where the Word can go, okay, that girl is ready. Let's transition her to something like that. And then we realize when we examine Paul's sending that the sending it's just the Lord giving out assignments. They're not rewards, right? These people are not, if someone's sent for an assignment, maybe it's a large one, maybe it's a whatever, it's not a reward necessarily to go, oh, you're more spiritual than the rest. No. Anyone is eligible to be sent by the Lord. Yeah. Because Paul goes, I'm the least, guys. And we know he's got a brilliant mind. He's got certain natural gifts. He says, I work harder than anyone. But when you look at him speak about his sending, he never justifies it by going, well, I was the smartest guy. I'm a great theologian. Look at me. He just goes, God picked me.
Yeah, and I'm the least.
And I'm the least of the saints. Yeah, guys, any of you, I remember the Lord corrected me on this years ago because in my thinking, I'm thinking apostles, prophets, and people that the Lord may unusually send, right? Because everyone the Lord has assignments for. My mind, I'm like, these are like the more gifted, the better. And I remember him just correcting me, like there aren't better versions of humans. And that's what Paul's saying. Like, dude, I wrote a big part of the Bible. I'm the least of all the saints. It was a grace given to me. He uses that language. It was a grace given to me. It's all a gift. So for us to understand sending, we have to understand not a competition, not an achievement contest. Yeah. It's us creating a healthy family where that Jew and Gentile dynamic, which also means Gentile and Gentile, goes, we love and celebrate each other. So now the Lord's got space to pick people we wouldn't pick. I actually want to use you to affect that part of your city. And we're like, I'd have picked the other one. But if we're in a healthy family, we can go, okay, I recognize the grace. Now let's contend for that. Yeah. Let's fight for that. Let's realize that it's a gift of God resting on them. And let's realize we serve a God who loves weakness. He loves to pick the person we wouldn't pick and then show his power working through that person. And instead of contending against them, let's come alongside him and go, okay, you're not capable of doing what God called you to do. I'm gonna help you. I'm gonna stand with you. I'm going to hold you accountable because you could fall into sin like anyone else. Sometimes we look at our leaders and we go, man, it must be amazing to be that person. And that person's like, actually, I wouldn't
mind somebody praying for me.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that shouldn't even be awkward for us to go, wait a minute, the guy that preaches really well needs someone to pray for him that he wouldn't stumble into sin or wouldn't do his marriage poorly or wouldn't fall into the love of money. Well, yeah, he's a human. He's just a gifted human. That's it. And so even in sending, we need this healthy. If someone gets a big assignment, like you said, nothing wrong with that, but we still go, hey, I'm glad you have a grace of God on your life that can produce quote unquote big things. Let's stand with you that you don't get off track. Yeah. Right? Let's remind you this is a gift of God. It's not the result of your own skill or your intellect or your achievements or anything like that. So there's just so much in this chapter that's informing what kind of church are we building, which is step one, and then Paul is demonstrating a here am I, because he goes, I'll go wherever the Lord sends me. Funny enough, sometimes he says, I don't speak outside of my realm. He says that to the Corinthians. Hey, I don't weigh in on other people. But when he's in his realm, he's like, I know God's appointed me here. The grace of God's in my life for this. I can speak with authority. But by the way, don't see me as a superhuman. I'm just like everyone else. I'm the least of all the saints. Yeah. It's the power of God in my weakness.
Yeah. My assignment from the Lord is not some sort of reward. It's what I'm called to. I need to work hard to walk in it, but it's not like some moral or ethical or because I'm gifted, or what have you. So, all right, so I'm just thinking about, because as we bring this first session to an end, I'm thinking about that whole concept. I think particularly because there is there is a move of God happening right now. We're watching it in a younger generation, and not just here in the States, but across the globe. And I think about things I've seen like with the underground church in Iran, where they're saying basically they're identifying people out of very unqualified backgrounds, former drug dealers, prostitutes, uneducated, but yet when they come into Jesus, man, they love him, but there's also saying like, hey, you have an assignment. Yeah. And so we want to help you in that. You know, we know you're a year or two out of being on cocaine, but now you're radically saved, serving Jesus. So we want to help launch you and walk with you in that. And the reason I'm bringing this up is I think for the days ahead, especially for the church here in the States and what God's doing among young people and how we can walk, particularly me as an older generation, is like, I'm not waiting for 30 years for you to hit all of the different things, but if we can identify something and walk with you and encourage you, and I don't lose by seeing you launched. You don't lose by seeing me launched. I mean, we're all in this thing together to demonstrate something to this world because this world needs Jesus.
Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think, again, Jesus is one of the best examples of this because his ministry strategy makes no sense, right? He, at least humanly speaking, he puts together this group of apostles. He conquers death, he's resurrected, and then he goes, here's how this works. I'm going to give you guys the Spirit, and I'm out. What? Like, I'm going to empower you, support you, be with you, but I'm going to actually let you advance the mission. And I'm like, wait, but we need Jesus now to go do stadium meetings, and these guys can be the admin team. Yeah. Instead, he goes, you've got a calling to operate in the grace of God, have the Spirit through your life, become a demonstration of me, and I would rather support and empower you to come into who you're meant to be. Even though you read the book of Acts, there's all kinds of trouble. There's ethnic tensions, racial tensions, conflict. People are growing up in the faith, and they make mistakes here and there. But the Lord's like, no, that's what I want to do. I want to get behind you and see you flourish and come into your calling because that's who the Lord is.
Awesome. So let's do this. Let's do a real quick wrap up. Yep. All right, so let's walk through. Some of our main points from today. Yep. All right, so here we go. Give me my first one.
So first main point is the revelation of the mystery of Jesus is a people that are very diverse. They're going to inevitably end up in conflict. But when they walk together, they're a demonstration of the nature of Jesus to their city, to their community, and to the spiritual powers.
Okay, and from a practical application standpoint, how do I participate in that? I learn how to forgive when conflict happens. I don't run from conflict. Yep. It's not time to find a new church, so to speak. In most cases, exactly. But I actually something's being stretched in me, a personality that's different. Maybe someone from just a different background that challenges me, or maybe we've had some bad experiences together, but I'm called to walk in grace with each other. We walk this out. Okay, what's the next point?
Next point, we just talked about Paul being the least of the saints. We talked about the fact that the power of God flows in his weakness. So that kind of opens things up to go, okay, this is not a competition of achievement and power and strength. It's loving each other in our weakness and our limitations, making space for the power of God to flow, celebrating each other so that we can see people sent into their calling on the basis of the grace of God on their lives, not their strength and performance and achievement.
Yeah. So I think that the second point of application is if you feel unqualified, if you sense that I'm not strong here, or I'm in a realm where I've been good, but now I'm being stretched to handle things that I don't feel like I can actually bear the weight of. I don't mean mentally or emotionally. I just meant like this. That calling seems beyond is to recognize that's a good place. Yep. That if you feel weak, you're in a really great space because that's what God's attracted to is weakness, because obviously then He gets glory. So I think an application there is that if you feel incredibly weak or unqualified, well, the calling isn't because of how awesome you are. Your calling isn't because of your gift to do whatever. Your calling is because the Lord delighted to actually give that to you, that you would walk in it knowing that He would have to be the one to sustain you and strengthen. So I could even think on a very practical level, there might be some new parents who are like, I'm not ready for this. Or maybe you've run into a crisis, maybe in the child's life, and you're like, well, I wasn't ready for this. Well, actually, no, God ordained you. God called you. And if you feel out of your realm, it's okay, because actually He's trusting that you're going to have to rely on Him. So I think on a home level, something like that. I think even the job, this is stretching me to get more education or this or that. No, it's wonderful. It's a wonderful invitation to grow and see that it's not a reward, but it's actually something you're called to. All right, last thing.
I think the last thing I would say is here I am, send me, right? Paul had this concept of, it's not just I gave my heart to Jesus and now I'm going on with my life. It's like, I've given my body to Jesus. Yeah. In other words, every part of me matters. Mm-hmm. God loves our bodies and he wants to use our bodies for the kingdoms, not just our thinking or our emotions or what we call our spiritual dynamic. And so Paul encompasses that by saying, I'm a slave of Jesus for the sake of the body. I'm joined to the body. I'm attached to the body. And he's got this holistic view. That means Jesus owns my body. He owns my thinking. He owns my feeling. All of those aspects are part of what it means to give my life to Jesus and follow Jesus.
And it makes me think of Hebrews 12. Brethren, in light of the tender mercies of God, present yourself as living sacrifices. Somebody else went in your place so that you could live your entire life unto the Lord. When it comes to our bodies, our lives, there's no secular and sacred. It's all sacred to him.
Yep, Romans 12, verse 1.
All right, guys, that's been walking through Ephesians 3 with Samuel Whitefield. And again, thank you so much for sharing. I know there's some really great insights there. Whole weakness thing, I think it's going to set a lot of people free. You don't need to get into a comparison thing. There's, all that. God delights in choosing us. He knows he chooses imperfect vessels. His original team is a great forever testimony to us as we're in the passages, but really encouraging us to run our race. I hope you're encouraged today. God bless you guys. This is the first of 3 different services. We look forward to coming back at you in service number 2. God bless you.